Hello and welcome back to the Novice Lumberjack, where we are going to go over a few different carb options for the Poulan high top saws. All right, so with the high tops, there's basically two different things. You've got the big blocks and you have the small blocks. The small blocks take this carb, which is an HDA 49. And there might be another number and everything, but they're the same carb. They just have a different number, maybe some internal differences or something like that. But what we see here on the intake of the carburetor, we're right at 17 millimeters. On the exhaust of the carburetor, on the engine side, we are 16 millimeters ish. Okay. The bigger carbs, they had a couple different kinds. This is a 164. This one is a this is a 164 also. I had it I just had it. 164. That's a 590. Oh well. Anyways, there's another one that's like 195 or I don't know. Whatever. Point is this one is 19 millimeters at the throat and 19 millimeters at the exhaust towards the engine. So same size on either side of the carburetor. This is a 590, an Echo 590 carburetor, and it is also 19 millimeters and 19 millimeters, both sides, Echo 590. This is the Duke's Chinese carburetor that is made to work on either the 590 or the 620. And it is also 19 millimeters by 19 millimeters. So this Duke's carburetor that, like I said, it's touted as being for both the 590 and the 620, and it is the same size as a stock 590 carburetor. 19 millimeters, 19 millimeters. Okay, so is this Duke Carb an upgrade for your 590? No, it is not. Now, I do believe they already have the high circuit governing circuit closed off, I believe. And so in that regard, yeah, it kind of is an upgrade. But the 620 carb is bigger than this, I believe. I am not going to go pull the one off of my Shindawa to check. But anyways, so a long time ago, let's get on with it here. The meat of the matter. This is a little carburetor for the Poulan high tops, the small blocks. The 3300, the 3000, the Craftsman 3.3, the Poulan Pro 335, 305, all of those got these. And you can see that probably. Little teeny tiny hole, right? It's a small carb. So would it be an upgrade if we went with one of these bigger carbs? Whether it be an upgrade or not is yet to be seen. But it's definitely, these are bigger, right? These are the same size. This is the Duke 625/90 carb. It's the same size as the big 60cc carbs that went on the Super 380, the 3750, all that stuff. The Poulan 330, I don't think got this carb. I think it still came with the little HDA 49. Anyways, now, a long time ago, whenever I was doing my first Dire Wolf, that's the Echo Timberwolf 590 that I upgraded again and again and again. And what I saw was that the layout of these two carburetors, let's go, this is the stock 590 carburetor, is the same. The only thing that's different is where your choke hooks up versus your choke and your throttle linkage are slightly different right there. Now, the holes are in exactly the same place, but the linkage points are slightly different. So this carb, while it's the same, is slightly different. So what I'm going to do, back then I was like, oh, there's a way to make that work. I know it. But I got squirreled off into a different direction and I did something else. It's the way it works. So what I'm going to do now, other people have done it already and say that it works, but nobody's made a video about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these HDA 49 carburetors and I'm going to remove the choke and throttle rod, put them on this Duke setup with the Duke butterflies. Throttle rod and choke rod have been removed from the HDA 49. Now we have the Duke's 620. We're going to make sure and do this one side at a time. It has a little ball bearing here. Goes down in that hole. There's got to be a spring or something behind that. Yep. Put the spring in. And put the ball bearing in. Then we slide our choke rod in. Now we have our nice snap acting position thing that ball bearing does that for us. There's little spots inside this rod. All right, now remember we marked that facing upwards. Okay, so I don't want to destroy one of these big carburetors, the big Poulan carburetors, because they're hard to get. But this Duke's carb was set up for the choke to go the other direction. And see right there, it's hitting the jet. So what I've got to do to get this thing to work in the right direction, if I was to use the butterflies off of this carburetor, it wouldn't be a problem. But I'm not. So what I've got to do is I've got to cut a little notch in my choke butterfly right there. I'll get back to you. Aha! I found the problem. So this is the Duke's carb. See that little nub there? You got one on each side. Right there. Both sides. I'm going to have to grind those off because they are stopping my butterfly from turning in. So I'm going to grind that off. Okay, now I got those ground off. See that? Da, da, da. So we put our spring in the hole. Put our ball bearing in the hole. And we put our shaft in the hole. let's try and use, nah. This is the butterfly out of a, bad big carb. I don't know why these carbs were prone to going bad, but they definitely are. I have, I think about 4 of the bad ones, or of the big ones, and 3 are known to be bad. So, let's see how that works. Oh, there we go. Flawless. So, when putting in the choke, you definitely have to grind off those little things on the Duke 620 carb. Does the... This is a 590, factory 590 carb. And it does not have those... Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. It has the knob. So you, if using a factory carb, you'd have to do the same thing. All right, but that is working flawless. We're good. Now, onto the throttle side. Now, the throttle side I expect to be a little bit more tricky. All right, so let's clear out air tang. We first remove this stopper. Note the way that that goes on. I'm pushing back all this stuff that has no use for me. There's the butterfly. Now the actual throttle itself. Now we take the throttle side out of this. First, let's do a quick inspection. That spring right there has a little arm or a little finger that reaches up and goes into that slot. We got the same slot over here. Golden. That is weird. Look at that. That butterfly is sandwiched in a slot for the throttle rod, so you have to pull it out. Never seen that before. Oops. Okay, there we go. So this is the Duke's 590 620 carburetor, which, as I checked earlier, it is the exact same size as an OEM 590 carburetor. All right. What we have is I took the throttle rods and the butterflies for both the choke and the throttle off of a known bad Poulan / Walbro HDA 164. So it was the big carburetor, and I swapped it over to this one. Looks like it should work. Now, the only problems that we have, I see two. At top here, this right here is for your impulse. And that'll be fine. A little bit different, but no big deal. That'll work. All right. But right there, this is for your fuel coming in from your fuel tank. So what we have to do is this one right here, we need to turn it and hope that it doesn't mess up anything. These things should just be pressed in, and turning it shouldn't cause a problem as far as a leak or anything like that goes. I think that'll do the trick. What do you think? But it can develop a leak there. If it does, then I would pull this out, put some seals all on it, and press it back in. That's how I would deal with that. The other issue is this has an impulse hole right here. Again, this is the Duke's. It has an impulse hole right here. If you notice on the Echo 590 OEM carburetor, it does not have that hole. All right, this is a lesson that's hard learned by a lot of people, and that is you can't have two impulse holes. Why not? Because one of them is going to leak. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pig epoxy. Pat turned me onto this stuff, and I will say that in certain situations, it is far superior to JB Weld. And one of these is one of those situations. What makes it superior in certain situations is that it has the ability to dry to a rock hard finish in like just a few minutes. You know, maybe like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. It's a two-parter. You just mix it up real good. Till it's all one uniform color. We're good. And now we just literally take a little tiny piece of it and we fill up that hole. Now with that, I wouldn't even have to let it dry. You know, that's going to be dry in a very short amount of time, and you're typically going to have a gasket over this anyways, so no fuel should get to it, because that's the deal. A lot of people think with multiple impulse holes like that, like, no, it ain't going to leak. There's a gasket there. No. I've witnessed it. I've seen it happen by a person smarter and more experienced than me, you know. They were using a carburetor like this that had that impulse hole, but it was also being fed up here. And this impulse hole, even though there was a gasket, it was drawing air, and causing all kinds of problems. Very hard to track down. Very hard to track down. So in a situation like this, you eliminate the one that you're not going to be using. I'm not going to be using that one, so I closed it off. And that'll dry up, that pig epoxy will dry up, and that'll never fall out of there. All right, so should be ready to go. We should be able to put this into service and actually see if it works. Keep an eye out for future videos where you'll see me testing this out and seeing how well it works. While I've got it out, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to grind off this screw right here, you know, get a little bit more material out of that rod. Same thing, I'll grind this screw head off and do the same thing back here. Why? So that we get maximum amount of fuel flow. Now, when I first started this video, I don't know how the edit of this is going to go, but whenever I first started it, I was using the smaller carb. And I probably could have used the smaller carb and still used the butterflies from the larger, bigger Duke's carburetor. But this being my first time, I ran into troubles with those little bits that I had to grind away. And since I ran into those troubles, I decided to just go with the larger carburetor butterflies and stuff. This was a bad carb anyways. I just didn't want to break into it because I just didn't. Anywho, that's how you modify one. Hopefully, that's how you modify the Duke's 590 carburetor and or a 620 carburetor or a actual OEM 590 carburetor to work on one of these Poulan high tops. Hopefully that's going to work out well, because I know a lot of saws out there either A, have been completely decommissioned because they couldn't find a carburetor, the proper carburetor for it, or they step down to the smaller carburetor and you lose power then. But this right here seems to be a viable option to keep these old 3750s and Super 380s running the way that they were intended to run.